distance, volcanoes spewed gas and dust into the dinosaurs' world. In the spring, flash floods were common. Rumbles in the Earth's crust caused swells and basins. Riverbanks were swept away, and the plains engulfed in water. Out of this alien landscape emerged a breathtaking assortment of plant-eating dinosaurs. The weirdest was Stegosaurus. Its name means spiked lizard, after the big bony plates that jutted out of its back from head to tail. 30 feet long and weighing 4 tons, Stegosaurus was the size of a bus, which made it the largest armored dinosaur that ever lived. Its arsenal of weapons was the ultimate self-defense. 17 diamond-shaped plates, each one 2 feet tall, culminated in a blistering array of prickly spikes.
Stegosaurus was one of the real spectacular dinosaurs. It had these large, sharp plates running down its back in 2 rows of alternating plates, and these spikes extended horizontally and back off its tail. The animal was probably pretty much left alone. It could use its tail as a very effective defensive feature, swinging the tail at the attacking meat-eating dinosaur.
Stegosaurus is one of the best-known dinosaurs in the world. But one feature still puzzles scientists. Its brain was no larger than a walnut. How did an animal so big get by on so little? What some lacked in smarts, others made up for in size. They were the sauropods, the superstars of the Jurassic, the largest creatures ever to walk the land. Plant eaters that were over 100 feet long. Some sauropods were also as tall as a 5-story building. Long-tailed and long-necked, they were eating machines that could graze either high or low.
The sauropods were the dominant animals in the late Jurassic. And as the dominant animals, the dominant plant-eating animals specifically, they're a very important food source for the large predators. Thus, these animals had to have important ways and efficient ways to defend themselves. Large body size was very important.
One sauropod that left an unforgettable imprint on the Jurassic was Diplodocus, meaning double beam, because of its equally long tail and neck. Diplodocus was almost 90 feet long, over 40 feet tall, and weighed 12 tons. But its huge tapering tail, almost half the length of its body, was Diplodocus's most intriguing feature.
Much of that tail was of no apparent use for walking or other behaviors, but because of the long sinuous nature, it is thought that perhaps that they could crack that thing like a bullwhip against the side of an animal attacking them and defend themselves in that way as well.
In the high-tech world of the Microsoft Corporation near Seattle, Washington, dinosaurs seem out of place. But Chief Technology Officer and dinosaur fanatic Nathan Mervold finds Diplodocus irresistible. Whatever its tail was used for, he thought he could prove it using a computer.
With computers, we can simulate the bodies of these dinosaurs and get very accurate simulations of what they would have worked like.
The simulation of the tail uncovered a startling possibility.
One of the most intriguing aspects, and that got me interested, was the notion that these tails might have acted like a whip.
Nathan made the groundbreaking discovery that Diplodocus's tail could travel faster than the speed of sound.
Pow, it makes a crack. When it makes one of these supersonic cracks, it's going about Mach 2, about 1,300 miles per hour. When people talk about supersonic, they think of the Concorde or an F-16 or something like this. And so the first reaction is, well, of course, it's absurd that a tail of a dinosaur could go faster than the speed of sound. How could that be? An ordinary bullwhip will go faster than the speed of sound. If cowhide is strong enough, well, why not dinosaur hide?
When Nathan looked at the tailbones of several sauropods, he found the same 10 vertebrae fused together.
I believe it's because they use their tails like whips. If you talk to whip makers, you say, where do whips wear out first? It's where you go from the stiff area here to the first part that's flexible. There's a tremendous amount of stress that generates here. This is where a whip wears out. That's where the dinosaurs had their bone fusion.
A tail faster than the speed of sound made Diplodocus a creature to contend with, but why would an animal weighing 12 tons need such a weapon? Lurking in the forest was a killer that knew no fear. 148 million years ago in North America, it would commit one of the most diabolical acts of carnage the dinosaurs would ever see. At the southern end of the Morrison Formation in central Utah, a stunning vista of barren rocks is all that remains of a land once teeming with life. Here, during the late Jurassic, docile plant-eating dinosaurs grazed in herds, wary of the danger that nearby a hungry killer was on the loose. Predators were frightening, but this one was unusually vicious. A two-legged meat-eater, Allosaurus, was 40 feet long and weighed up to 2 tons, but it was lightning swift. Armed with huge claws and sharp serrated teeth, Allosaurus was a prehistoric kickboxer with a lust for blood. One bleak summer, 148 million years ago, the rain stopped. Rivers ceased flowing. Stricken by drought, the verdant plains of central Utah began to dry up. Food was scarce, but water, the wellspring of life, was scarcer. All that remained were a few isolated pools of mud. One would become a death trap. Today, it's known as the Cleveland Lloyd Quarry. Here, scientists have exhumed over 10,000 dinosaur bones. But it's the tragic events surrounding one day of carnage that dinosaur detective Dale Russell of the North Carolina State University is trying to piece together.
Well, this is where it began. 148 million years ago, a group of plant-eating dinosaurs looked in this direction when these sediments were being deposited, and it was a drought, and they saw a surface that was wet, and they walked down toward that surface, and it turned out to be mud.
Mired in the mud, the plant eaters panicked. Lured to the scene by the frenzy, a large Allosaurus moved in for the kill.
He charges across the mud surface and begins slaughtering those animals. And perhaps the plant-eating dinosaurs struggled, perhaps they roared, perhaps they squealed, perhaps they defecated, but it didn't do any good because they were fastened.
Attracted by the roars of pain and the stench of death, other Allosaurs joined in the carnage. Within minutes, the mud was awash with blood and half-eaten carcasses. As the massacre reached a fever pitch, the meat-eaters turned on each other.
We have 13 huge plant-eating dinosaurs dead. We have 6 flesh-eating dinosaurs, passers-by to the scene, that were also caught in the death trap. And we have 44 Allosauruses, most of them half-grown, who were killed in the process of trying to compete for flesh in that trap.
Since its discovery, the scene of the crime has been kept under wraps to preserve the bones of the dinosaurs that died on that fateful day.
This is the arm and hand of an Allosaurus. It's larger than average, and you can see from my hand here that it's extremely powerfully constructed. This arm had claws that were shaped and formed so that the animal could hold onto the prey, not to cut its body. When the Allosaur grabbed its prey, These claws were simply to hold the animal.
Its victim lies just 3 feet away, a 20-ton sauropod.
Over here, on this side of its pelvis, you can see these deep grooves that I'm cleaning here. They were all made by an Allosaurus who was actually breaking bone off of this pelvis. This tells us something about the power and the strength of Allosaurus. It was not a small animal.
Allosaurus was the most vicious predator of its day. But its nasty nature may have been aggravated by a tough and miserable life. At the Museum of the Rockies in Montana, Rebecca Laws has been studying the skeleton of Big Al, the most complete Allosaurus ever found. Her findings may earn this beast a little sympathy.
The kind of life this dinosaur had was probably very painful, given the number of infections in its feet and in its hand, the injuries in its rib cage, and other problems throughout its skeleton. Some of them were definitely injuries where the bone had been broken and rehealed, like on this rib here. And some of them were infections, like in the thumb bone of the right hand here.
A closer look at the bones revealed still more abnormalities. Many were swollen and distended, while others were pitted or cracked. In all, she found a total of 19 injuries on Big Al's skeleton, everything from fractured ribs to a bone marrow infection.
Osteomyelitis, a bone marrow infection, does occur in humans, and it is extremely painful. This is the bone that was infected, as well as being broken and rehealed from its right hand, and this is the bone from its left hand, so you can see how inflamed it would have been.
Allosaurs fought with their hands and feet. Any injury would have been torture.
This type of injury to the toe, or the claw rather, of Big Al would have been like ripping your toenail off and trying to regenerate that or regrow that. And Big Al would have been in a significant amount of pain.
The Jurassic was the age of giants and survivors. It was a brutal world of kill or be killed. But evolution was in overdrive. While Diplodocus lumbered across the continent, whipping its tail faster than the speed of sound, crocodiles dominated the waterways, and tiny amphibians eked out a meager living at the bottom of the food chain. But for some, like the battered Allosaurus and the armor-plated Stegosaurs, time was running out. After 60 million years, North America began to change. Sea levels were rising. The climate was heating up. Over time, familiar landscapes withered and disappeared. The Jurassic had spawned some of the strangest dinosaurs that ever lived. But the future looked bleak. The stars of the Jurassic had to evolve or die. Which was it to be? $125 million years ago, a curtain descended on North America. A series of cataclysmic events was changing the face of the Earth. The world was passing from the Jurassic period into the Cretaceous. Before it was over, some of nature's greatest creations would vanish into oblivion. Gone were the legendary giants of the past, Allosaurus, Stegosaurus, and the long-necked sauropod Diplodocus. In the shifting sands of time, extinction would overwhelm them. But how? And why? The violent upheavals that began 150 million years ago reached a peak in the Cretaceous. volcanoes exploded.